Chapter 7: The Reality of Frustration. The preceding chapters have given us strong reasons for being joyful amidst the difficulties and disappointments we face in life and ministry. Yet, most devout Christians struggle when they face painful experiences. The Bible has a place for such struggle. Most Christians have been exposed to a strong emphasis on the blessings God gives us without a corresponding emphasis on the reality of disappointments in life. Disappointment over the disappointments one faces can dampen joy even among faithful believers. In the next 3 chapters, we want to build a biblical theological foundation for facing hard times. In the first 4 chapters of the Apostle Paul's most theologically systematic book, the Epistle of the Romans, he expounds on the way of salvation by grace through faith. After a summary statement about the way of salvation in the first 2 verses of chapter 5, he makes a statement about suffering. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings. Romans chapter 5, verse 3. Chapters 6 to 8 deal with the issue of holiness, climaxing in a statement about life in the Spirit. Romans chapter 8, verses 1 to 17. That discussion on sanctification leads to a powerful exposition on suffering. So after explaining both salvation and sanctification, Paul talks about suffering. A theology of suffering, then, is key to understanding the Christian life. I have written a whole book that explores the theology of suffering devotionally. In the next 2 chapters, I will discuss 3 aspects of the theology of suffering from Romans 8, which I believe will enable us to accept suffering with contentment without being disillusioned about what we are experiencing. Frustration. Paul makes an affirmation about the reality of frustration. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Romans 8, verse 20. As a result of the fall, the world lost its equilibrium, and God himself subjected it to frustration. The word we translate as futility, brackets, or frustration in the NIV, brackets close, is matiotis, which means the inability of something to fulfill its intended purpose. Things go wrong. This is the same Greek word that the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, uses in Ecclesiastes, which we translate today as vanity or meaningless. A distinct feature of the understanding of frustration in Romans 8 is the hope of God's ultimate victory. But while we are here in this fallen world, we will live with frustration. Indeed, God answers prayer, and we have the authority of Christ in our lives and ministries. But our model is an incarnate Lord who humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. Philippians 2, verse 8. The author of life became obedient to death. Hebrews 2, verse 10 says, "For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering." Our model is an incarnate Lord who suffered. Several years ago, I did a study on New Testament references to Jesus as an example for Christians to follow. I found 29 passages in the New Testament where Jesus is presented as our model. 6 passages are general calls to be, to obey, and to forgive like Jesus. The other 23 passages are calls to suffer and to be servants or to persevere with patience like Jesus. most of the servanthood passages are about suffering. So, 23 out of 29 passages that asks us to follow Christ's examples have to do with servanthood and suffering. To be like Jesus is to be willing to suffer. Therefore, we should not be surprised when we suffer while doing ministry, and should not be discontented by our lot. I would say that a key requirement for anyone hoping to do ministry using the incarnational model of Christ is the ability to live with frustration. Consider these examples of frustration. We proactively seek to win the lost, but few are saved. Some walk away from the faith and end up finding fault with the very person who labored to disciple them. People we trust betray us. Colleagues turn against us. People whom we help sacrificially turn against us when we do one thing that they don't like. Our spouses don't fully understand what our thinking is on many issues. We struggle with knowing how to parent our child well. An open-air program we worked hard to prepare for falls flat because of an unexpected rain shower. Plans for a fruitful year of ministry are ruined by a cancer diagnosis. People don't seem to understand who we are and what our motives are. Some don't appreciate our service and just try to grab whatever they can from us. Heading: pain from those we serve. Let's look at one area of frustration that causes pain to servants of Christ: rejection by those we serve. Paul's epistles often show him grappling with a sense that after all he had done for his readers, they had rejected his teaching for that of unworthy false teachers. He expresses his pain over this in Galatians and in 2 Corinthians. For example, "Make room in your hearts for us. We have wronged no one. We have corrupted no one. We have taken advantage of no one. I do not say this to condemn you, for I said before that you are in our hearts to die together and to live together." 2 Corinthians 7 verses 2-3. Paul makes himself vulnerable as he opens his heart to his brothers and sisters in Corinth. He tells them, "We have spoken freely to you, Corinthians. Our heart is wide open. You're not restricted by us, but you are restricted in your own affections. In return, I speak as to children, widen your hearts also." 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 11-13. If we open our hearts to the people we serve, as Paul did, the pain of rejection will be intense. Most people look at life from the perspective of their own needs and desires. If we fail to meet those needs, they will be dissatisfied. They will forget all the good we have done to them. They won't think about possible reasons why we did not do what they wanted. It may not matter to them that we were tired or sick or handling a family emergency. When we don't act in the way others want, they might blame us for that. Often, those we minister among do not appreciate us, while others outside our ministry seem to show more appreciation. This should not surprise us. When you're a leader, those you lead expect things from you. Most people are grumblers by nature. Guess whom they will grumble most about? Their leaders. It's easy for people to blame their leaders for not getting the things they want. Often there is some truth in what they think. We all make mistakes, and we expect others to appreciate the sacrifices we make for them. But sometimes people forget all of that and complain that their desires have not been met. Recently, a person I had administered to substantially called me after he heard me speak to accuse me of not practicing what I preach in my relationship with them. That was a hurtful blow. Moses had to endure much grumbling from the people of Israel. Hebrews says of him, by faith Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. Hebrews 11 verses 24 to 26. But the people whom he served faithfully and sacrificially constantly grumbled against him. Some of God's great servants were rejected by the very people among whom they served. Jonathan Edwards, 1703 to 1758, was possibly the greatest philosophical mind in North America. Under his leadership in church in America, experienced a great revival called the Great Awakening. But Edwards was dismissed by the church he pastored. Of course, today he's considered a hero by many. New editions of his writings are presently being published more than 2.5 centuries after his death. Helen Roseveare, 1925 to 2016, was a brilliant and heroic missionary doctor in the Congo. After graduating from the Cambridge University, she went to Congo and started a hospital in an area where there were no medical facilities. The demand for her services was so great that she started a program to help train others to treat patients. During a rebellion against colonial rule, she was repeatedly beaten and raped. She went back to the United Kingdom for a few months to recover, and then returned to Congo. After some time, she encountered a wave of anti-Western sentiment that affected even the Christians. This resulted in her being told to leave the work she started because she was no longer wanted there. Yet today she is considered to be one of the missionary heroes of the 20th century. After her return to Britain, she began an international speaking and writing ministry. God also used her to bring healing to others who had gone through abuse as she had. I had the privilege of being with her at 2 conferences. The second time was when she was in her 80s. She was such a joyful and humorous person, certainly a testimony to the joy of serving the Lord. I need to say here that if our ministry is our primary source of fulfillment, rejection by those who we serve can be a devastating experience. The behavior of other humans should never be the most important thing that we think about. Our primary fulfillment comes from God and His acceptance of us as His beloved children. If that is the case, then while rejection by humans is painful, as it was to Paul, it does not devastate us. Our deep source of joy is untouched by human rejection. Heading: our frustration is mixed with hope. Hope is a key theme in Romans 8. In Romans 8 verse 20, Paul asserts that the creation was subjected to futility in hope. The next verse describes this as the hope of God's victory at the end of time. The creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. 8 verse 21. Next, Paul says the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth. 8 verse 22. Birth pangs represent hopeful groaning against pain. Later, Paul says that the hope prompts us to be patient amidst hardship. 8 verse 25. The Bible is clear that there is reward for faithful service. This gives us the courage to persevere. After describing the hope of our resurrection, Paul says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. 1 Corinthians 15:58. The Christian hope of rewards following the judgment is a key to contentment while facing injustice and unfair treatment in life and ministry. Being made in the image of God, we chafe against injustice. We may need to do something to redress the wrong done to us and others. But whether that works satisfactorily or not, we know there will be a reward for patient service. This frames our approach to life. So we think about the future consummation all the time and derive our values from there. As a missionary, C.T. Studd famously wrote, "Only one life 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Jesus will last." Some may have to wait until they get to heaven before they see their reward. Jeremiah was rejected by his people, and he suffered emotionally because of that. He was called a traitor. A main reason for this rejection was that he urged the people not to make an alliance with Egypt. The last we hear of him is that he himself was taken to Egypt, but there too he continued his ministry. Other servants of God will see the fruit of their labors in this life. The Corinthians hurt Paul deeply by their unfaithfulness. He sent them another stern letter, which we do not have with us today. But this is what he says about that letter. "For I wrote to you out of much affliction and anguish of heart, and with many tears, not to cause you pain, but to let you know the abundant love that I have for you." 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 4. He was so nervous after sending the letter that he couldn't do any work until news came of how the letter was received. He says, "When I came to Troas to preach the gospel of Christ, even though a door was opened for me in the Lord, my spirit was not at rest because I did not find my brother Titus there. So I took leave of them and went on to Macedonia." Chapter 2, verse 12 to 13. Then Paul got the good news from Titus that the church in Corinth had accepted the rebuke and repented. Thinking about that, without even mentioning that Titus had come, Paul burst into a chorus of praise. "But thanks be to God, who in Christ always leads us in triumphal procession, and through us spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of him everywhere." 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. In this case, Paul saw positive fruit during his lifetime. Many believe that they have obeyed God conscientiously, but are encountering severe frustration and pain. Listen to the words of Paul. "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap, if we do not give up." Galatians 6, verse 9. We always have hope that we will see rewards, either in this world or the next. Further reflection. How do you maintain a healthy balance between loving people in a way that includes openness to being hurt and ensuring that your primary sources of fulfillment are not your circumstances or the people you serve?